When you're purchasing a piling, you need to have a very good definition of your target market. Please come and test the machine. The machine that you're purchasing, the model, the exact same configuration, jump in the machine and see how it feels. Plan the purchase. I've seen this over the years so many times when companies want to purchase a piling rig, but they leave it to the last moment where they have no choice. They have to go ahead with it. Choosing the right size for your piling projects. Piling rigs can vary so much in size, and when I talk about a class of piling rig, I usually mean what overall weight do they have. So they can vary between... I'm Mike the Broda, and this is TerraQUIP Talk. After years of providing drilling equipment solutions, I know that a project success hinges on reliable, high-quality rigs that meet your needs. So if you're ready to make smarter equipment decisions and build stronger foundations, let's get started. Good day, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in again. This is episode 3. I'm super excited to be talking today about what it means to purchase a piling rig and how to purchase it. We're going to be talking about all of these aspects that are going to help you and influence, hopefully in a positive way, the next purchase of your piling rig and procurement of your piling rig. So I really hope you consider them well. And in the end, all I care is that they help you. All of these points help you, regardless if you're purchasing from me or from someone else. These points are just designed to help with your process and to keep you better informed. And the reason why I'm so excited is because I've been on the other side of the fence selling piling rigs for the last 15 years of my life. It's been pretty much my entire career. And I have seen things that I think if I talk about them, they'll help other people when they need to purchase one, whether it's their first piling rig or the second or the third and so forth. Okay, we're gonna get straight into it, and we're gonna be talking about point number 1. When you're purchasing a piling rig, you need to have a very good definition of your target market. So first, you need to decide what segment of the market you want to focus on. I mean, are you gonna target the small residential foundation projects or the large infrastructure projects or medium-sized commercial government contracts? The decision will heavily influence what type and size of rig you need, and of course, the territory that you're looking to target. Is it going to be more like a metro area, or is it going to be more like a remote area? So that's super important when choosing the right rig, is defining what sort of market you want to go after, because that's also gonna get you into what the right size of the piling rig. I mean, the rigs can vary from so many sizes, but with that, we're gonna get into point number 2, which is choosing the right size for your piling projects. As I said earlier, piling rigs can vary so much in size, and when I talk about a class of piling rig, I usually mean what overall weight do they have. So they can vary between, they can be as small as 2 tons and they can go all the way up to like 250 tons or 260 tons in some cases. Those are extreme on both sides of the scale. I would say more on the upper side of the scale, they're more rare. But in any case, I would say the medium range would be the 40-ton class, 30 to 40-ton class. That's the most popular size worldwide, regardless of the manufacturer or the area that you're working. Except probably the Middle East. I'd say that in the Middle East, they work more with larger units than in other parts of the world. The size of your rig is crucial and will depend, of course, on the scope of your projects. In some cases, it also depends on the type of material that you're looking to drill, and that would also determine your size. Because, for example, if you have to drill heavy, extremely rock basalts or rocks or rhyolites, or for example, in Queensland, in Brisbane, we have the Brisbane Tuff, then you will need something that's 40 ton and above, that's heavy, that's robust, because you need the weight to actually sit on that tool. If you're looking to drill in areas, for example, like Adelaide has a lot of clays, or Sydney where it has a lot of shale or sand or even sandstone, then small rigs can be useful as well. And of course, depending on the depth you need to drill. Depth is another important parameter when it comes to piling, and in some cases, the deeper you have to go, the larger the machine you need to employ for that particular jobs. I know that in some cases, the maximum depth, can be quite big, even on some smaller units, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you can actually achieve that depth. That's the physical depth that you can go to, and of course the physical maximum diameter, but maximum depth and maximum diameter can't really be achieved at the same time. unless you have extremely soft material. So this is one thing I always tell my clients to be on the lookout for. Don't go by the maximum sizes, in the same way that you wouldn't just go and buy a Toyota Corolla and say like, okay, it has 180 kilometers maximum speed. I'm only gonna go with 180. Maybe you can reach 160 or 170 in some rare occasions, but you wouldn't run it at 100% capacity all the time. And it's the same with piling rigs. I would say the sweet spot would be between 70 to 80%. That, of course, doesn't mean that some people don't have projects where they really need to achieve those projects with the machines being run at 120% their capacity. It can happen. It's normal. That's what they're made for. But in general, it's good to keep that in mind, that it needs to be size appropriate and to be run at about 70 to 80% of their capacity. Okay, point number 3 that I think people should be very careful when choosing the right drilling rig is choosing the right technology that they need to drill in. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the technologies that we have in our beautiful industry. And that the most popular are Kelly bar drilling or bore pile method, or in some case large diameter pile, they just call it. And then the other one is CFA, which stands for continuous flight auger technology. They're vastly different methodologies of drilling. Therefore, the piling rigs that are employed to do those particular projects are vastly different as well. However, majority of the piling rigs can be versatile enough to be converted from one technology to another with the help of what we call a CFA kit, which are just literally a bunch of components that can be added on to the piling rig after other components have been taken off. And we're going to dedicate other episodes in talking about the conversion, because this is a very, very important and elaborate topic. But for now, we're going to talk about what other drilling methodologies they are, which are literally just a spin-off of the two main technology, which are Kelly bar drilling or bore pile method and CFA. So in terms of Kelly bar drilling, a spin-off would be the low headroom, where you have to drill Kelly bar, but in very restricted areas where you don't have much space up. The headroom is limited, and that's called low headroom. And again, majority, or let's say maybe half of the rigs, they can be converted into low headroom because they'll be fitted with a segmental mast. So then that middle section of the mast can be taken out, called the intermediate mast, can be taken off. Therefore, the cat head falls down, the Kelly bar gets replaced because it's shorter. So then you'll be able to drill in restricted spaces. That's called low headroom. And IMT machines, majority of them come with a segmental mast, which allows them very easy conversion into low headroom without spending too much money or too much time on it. Then, of course, from the CFA, we have what we call the case CFA, or the double rotary. And that technology is categorized by literally having two rotaries. One of them spins the auger, the continuous flight auger, and the other one spins counterclockwise. Let's say the auger spins clockwise, the casing spins the other way, in order to cancel the torsion moments that are applied on the mast when drilling, and in order to achieve basically a more integral pile, let's say a better finish. And this methodology is usually employed when there's a lot of water ingress and they need to be cased, double cased CFA piles. So you basically have two rows of piles, and they're soft, and the hard ones are drilled in between in order to secure and to seal the parameter of whatever you're drilling, like for a basement, or if you're building a car park, for example. Then we have other methodologies such as soil mixing, which is more like a soil improvement methodology. Then, of course, you have vibro hammers, which are used in order to vibrate sheet piling into the ground. And instead of creating round piles, you just literally build sheet piles that have an H profile, for example. Or there's a situation where the piles are built off-site, they're precast, and they're driven into the ground with the help of a hammer. It's called an impact hammer. So there's multiple methodologies out there, but majority of them are, as I said, Kelly bar and CFA. So making sure that you choose a rig that supports the technology required for the specific project that you're targeting is essential. And Now we're going to move into point number 4, and that is something very important, which is the budget, right? Because given the recent price increases across our industry, piling rigs are no exceptions. And actually, piling rigs have their prices have gone up significantly in the last few years, and that's regardless if you're talking about Chinese, Italian, German, or Finnish manufacturers. So when it comes to the actual numbers of in pricing in piling rigs, they can vary so much, right? They can literally start from, I would say, if you purchase a small piling rig that's 2 tons, let's say overall weight, it can cost like $200,000 or $250,000. And then it can be as expensive as, I don't know, some of the German manufacturers, for example, they may be selling pilings that are in excess of $5 million. So the price varies a lot. I'd say the most common price that you'll see is anywhere between $1 and $1.5 million, depending on the size of the rig that you're buying, and of course on the manufacturer. And with this, we're gonna get into a little bit of a detail here with the higher end rigs compared to the more budget rigs, and of course, as also we have on the lower scale, the lower prices, the cheaper versions. So the higher end rigs, what do we mean by that? Of course, we mean Bauer and Liebherr. They're the top tier brands in our industry. They're often referred to as the Rolls Royce of our industry. Everybody knows that they can't be contested. They're robust, they're strong. They have a lot of computers and electronics on them. They're reliable, and they are employed on larger infrastructure projects. Then, of course, we're going to move into the more medium range of pioneers, and that's usually with the Italian manufacturers. IMT is the manufacturer that we represent. We've been representing in Australia with TerraQUIP for the last 7 years. And it's what we consider the best value for money machine. Like it's a very good value for how much it costs, considering the prices nowadays. And why do I say that is because it's a hydraulic over electronic machines. We spoke about this stuff, about this aspect in one of the previous episodes if you want to check it out. Yeah, that's usually the Italian manufacturers are, let's say, the more like medium range. Of course, they can be exceptions as well. They can be the more high-end ones. They can be the lower-end ones as well. But I'd say a middle point would be IMT is a good example of them. And of course, we have another Italian manufacturer that we represent on the micro drilling range, and that is Marini. Marini also have tremendous experience in this game. They've been around pretty much like IMT about 50 years, and they manufacture great quality product. And I would say they're a very good value for money supplier as well, but they active more into the micro drilling segment. And then of course we have the cheaper versions, and that's more of the Asian brands. I'm not going to get into too many details about that. But yeah, budget is such an important thing when purchasing a piling rig, and you have to consider it so well, because most of the time you're going to have to finance it. So you're going to pay a lot of interest on that. And you have to be really careful how you balance that act, I guess. Now, we covered the higher end manufacturers, and that doesn't mean that they used on larger infrastructure projects, but that doesn't mean that the Italian brands are not used on larger infrastructure projects as well, or they're not good for that. They are good. It just really depends, I guess, what the contractor prefers. Sometimes what the developer or their client endorses as well. And of course, it really depends on the support that they have in that area, depending on the machine that they purchase. When it comes to the cheaper models, of course, as I said, we have the Asian manufacturers out there. They've been selling a lot through Asia, and slowly they're creeping into Australia as well and to other countries. You got to be very careful, because you got to make sure that they have local support. I actually have a story with one of our clients that were looking to purchase an Italian brand, but in the end they went for a cheaper version. They bought a Chinese rig. Now what happened was, when it was delivered and it was time for commissioning, unfortunately the Chinese technician couldn't secure the visa to enter Australia. So the client ended up having lots of issues, delayed projects. He came, begging us to come and help them. And we said, I'm really sorry. It's not our brand. We don't know how to work on it. Of course we do. But it's not really our brand. We can't really work on it. So You got to keep that in mind, you got to be very careful of that. When it comes to this point about the budget, it's really important to keep in mind that most of the time you'll need to finance the asset because it costs a lot of money. So I doubt that everybody just has lying around $1.5 million just sitting there. So when you talk about finance, a lot of the majority, I'd say, of the finance institutions wouldn't finance the equipment, the piling rig, unless is in Australia and the supplier has it in stock. In which case, if he doesn't and you need to order it from the factory, you need to secure it with, sometimes 20 or 30% deposit. So 30% deposit of $1.5 million is $500,000. It's quite expensive. So keep in mind that the deposit is having deposit is quite important, and the deposit is important also in order to ensure that you can secure the finance, because not many banks are willing to finance an item that is so niche, so specialized, and it costs so much money. Just quickly, need reliable drilling equipment for your next project? At TerraQUIP Drilling Equipment, we offer tailored solutions with top-tier support to meet your project needs. Contact us using the links in the show notes to find the perfect equipment for your drilling project. Now back to the episode. Okay, another point that we need to be careful of when purchasing a piling rig is, of course, the after-sales support. And I cannot stress how critical this is, especially if you don't have in your company in-house mechanics. You got to make sure that the supplier that's selling you the machine offers a really solid after-sales support, including access to spare parts, technical support, maintenance, commissioning, and literally just being there locally on the phone, not in a different time zone, and answering your phone calls for the problems that they may have. So if you plan on relying on the dealer for technical support, you got to make sure that they have them. You can ask the supplier to introduce you to the team, to the technicians team, and you can start to establish a relationship with them if you don't have it already. And you can even ask them questions, make them, put them in a position of being the salesperson, because of course the salesperson is trained to answer your questions, but the technician will always be honest, right? They don't know how to be a salesperson. So I always advise this to people: come and talk to my guys. My guys are not salespeople, come and discuss with them and ask them uncomfortable questions, and then you'll be happy. Now, when it comes to spare parts, you need to make sure that you have a very good idea of how much they cost. And again, if they're available on stock in Australia or in your area that you're purchasing that piling rig from. This one thing is very important, and I warn a lot of companies before purchasing a certain machine, ask the salesperson to give you a few examples of how much it costs, for a replacement glass, or for, besides filters and oils and consumables, like such things like pads or Kelly bars or Kelly bar elements, because chances are you will meet the situation where you'll have to replace parts that are not under warranty. So the first 12 months, of course, you're covered under warranty for spare parts and services, but after that you're liable for the cost and the charges associated with this. One thing that's super important to mention about warranty, and you have to be clear that you understand this: every single manufacturer, when they say they cover your machine for warranty, it doesn't actually include the travel that it takes them to go from where they are, whether they're in Italy or in Sydney or in Melbourne or whatever, to your job site. So if you're working remotely, you got to make sure that you know that you're going to have to pay for the transport. They're only liable for paying for the spare part and for the actual charges for the delivery and for your travel for your technician. So imagine a regional flight can cost up like $1,000, and then plus accommodation, plus rental car, plus food and all this stuff. You're liable for those costs, because of course the manufacturer doesn't know where you're going to be working and cannot account for those costs. They can't cover them. So that's a good example. In terms of the spare parts, I actually have a story with a client that purchased a different brand of piling rigs. And then what happened was the machine was under warranty, it was all good, and it was working fine, but they broke the front window. And just for the front window, they got a quote of a replacement window for $12,000. That leads us to point number 6, and that is to plan the purchase. I've seen this over the years so many times when companies want to purchase a piling rig, but they leave it to the last moment where they have no choice. They have to go ahead with it. There's a number of reasons why they do this, right? Reason number 1 being they bid for a project which they're waiting for that to be awarded. They wait for that to be signed off to them and to be absolutely sure that they're going to be starting, because otherwise they don't want to take the risk. And I've said this so many times to so many clients, hang on a second, you're not buying a machine for a single project. Yes, it would be great if you could use it on that project too, it would help, but you're purchasing a machine for the next 10, 15 years. This is a long-term game. It's not for an immediate, let's say, situation and for a short-term purchase. And the reason why you need to plan, why clients need to plan the purchase is because, number one, if the machine is not in the country and you have to deal with the delivery times, sometimes logistics can be very unreliable, and the transport companies are out of our hands. We can't, as dealer, we can't help you if the shipping line is late, or if the Australian customs takes their time and they don't have the people to clear the machines, and then you're gonna encounter delays because of that. Then secondly, of course, there is the configuration of the machine. If you have the time to plan the machine and the purchase in the right way, you'll have the time to purchase exactly the configuration that you need with the accessories that you need. You can tailor make the purchase and that machine. And thirdly, of course, if there's any delays of any kinds in regards to whether the shipping or the manufacturer, unfortunately, you're going to be liable for those delays, and they're going to impact your project. That's why what we've done as a dealer, we tried as best as possible to bring machines in stock and have them readily available for our clients. But of course, it's really hard. You know, out of 30 models that we have, it's impossible to bring 30 models in stock, because we would need to be billionaires, you know, to afford that kind of money. And of course, we can't. But there's always, you know, that's crystal ball sort of process where you're trying to speak to people and determine, based on the projects that they have out there, what they have in the forecast that they could potentially get, what sort of size, what sort of model do they need, or do they think they need. Point number 4, please consider you're not investing such a big amount of money for a single project. As I said, you're looking at investing for the next 10, 15 years, and you're purchasing a machine that you have to consider the resale value, because it's, as I said, it can take up to 6 months to sell a machine. So that's extremely important as well. Okay, now point number 7 that you need to keep in mind, that I've been telling my potential clients and my clients this all the time: please come and test the machine. The machine that you're purchasing, the model, the exact same configuration. Actually come and sit in the machine and get your operator to demo it, or you as an owner, if you're not an owner operator, jump in the machine and see how it feels. I know companies which said, oh, but we know the model really well, we don't need to sit in it. What can happen is that the same machine, same manufacturer, same model can have a totally different feel, simply because the manufacturer has changed the suppliers that they work with. Say, for example, the hydraulic pump supplier, you know, or the engine. It can be a totally different engine for exactly the same machine, which maybe you're not gonna like. So I tell everybody, make sure you jump in that machine. And I know that sometimes it's difficult, because let's say you're ordering the machine from overseas. It's not that easy to send someone from Australia 2 days on a flight to go and sit in a machine. But it's important, right? Because it's such a huge investment. I think they should. And I always encourage people to come with us in Italy and sit in our machines, because they will like it. And I have to add in here, one thing that helped us over the years get a lot of clients and get them to move from the existing brands that they were using was just to get them to demo our machines and sit in our machine. I said, look, I don't care what you're buying. You can buy any other brand out there. The only thing that I care about is just you taking the time to actually sit in my machine and drill a hole with it. I want to take you on a job site, or I want to take you to my yard, or in a testing facility, or at the factory. I don't care where, but I want you to sit in one and have a good look at it. Even if you've decided you want to buy it, I still want you to be happy with the machine before you sign off. So this is a really important part. And then last but not least, I think we need to look very carefully, as I said, at the resale value. And I'm going to delve a little bit more into this, because a lot of the people still have no idea how a piling rig is being valued. We get so many phone calls nowadays, you know, from valuators trying to establish the value of a particular rig, especially secondhand rigs. So what do I mean by resale value? I mean, once you purchase the piling rig, say 6 months later something goes wrong, or simply you just finished the project that you bought it for, and you just want to get rid of it. You just want out of that sector, let's say, out of that segment of the market. So you have to keep in mind, IMT has a very good resale value, have a really good name, have a lot of history behind them. And for this, the 2 cases out of 40 machines that we sold, 2 cases that we've had of reselling the machine, we were able to get incredibly good value for the clients that sold them. Of course, that sale of the secondhand IMT was also influenced by the fact that prices went up. So of course, you're no longer paying the price, or let's say 30%, 40% less from the price that you purchased it at the beginning. You paid 30, 40% less from the price that the machine is currently on now, brand new, if that makes sense. So now at the end, we went through all the points, guys. So by considering all of these factors, such as like the target market, the size, the drilling technology, the budget, the after sales support, you can make a well-informed decision, hopefully, when purchasing your next piling rig. And I really hope I'm going to be talking to you about this stuff because, again, piling rigs are my passion. It's what I've done for the last 15 years. And I have helped a countless amount of companies get into piling or purchasing the second, the third, fifth piling rig. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time. Thanks for tuning into TerraQUIP Talk. If you enjoyed this episode, the best way to support us is by leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And don't forget to subscribe on YouTube so you never miss an episode. You can also find out more from me on all social media platforms. The links are below. Until then, remember, if it's not turning, you're not earning.